This is Evangelist George McTire of the Word of God Ministry, and this clip is in response to a video of a individual's name. I don't know how to really pronounce his name, so I'm just gonna say Cenk or Chink or whatever his name is. But he's somebody from this organization called the Young Turks, and this video is going to be in response to that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the clip for you, and then my response will be after the clip. Also, be advised that for the first minute or so of the clip, you'll see a little watermark something there. That's because I had to convert the video in order to set it up where I could make a comment to it and attach it. So therefore you'll see a little mark like in the center of the screen. It'll be there for about 1 minute and then it will disappear. But I want you to pay close attention to what this individual is saying, and then I will respond after the clip, because there's something very interesting I want you to notice.
All right, welcome back. For today's Town Square, we're going to try a little something different. I'm going to shut up for a second and let someone else do the talking for a change. It is something we are calling the Daily Rant. And here to help us launch the segment is friend of the show, Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks. He's got something to say about tax cuts for the rich and who they really benefit. My Turkish friend, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dylan. The conventional wisdom in Washington, and certainly among conservative circles, is that tax cuts for the rich always work. They always stimulate the economy, and what happens is the rich then take their money and create jobs with it, and the economy improves. Now, here's the problem with that. And when you look at the facts, it is completely, utterly wrong. So, for example, the lowest tax rates we had in the country, almost the lowest ever, were right between 1925 and 1931. They were at about 25% for the richest people in the country. And what happened? A total collapse, the Great Depression. Now, how about in the 2000s when George W.
Now, are you sure that
Yes.
was the tax codes that caused the stock market collapse?
Now, Dylan, here's the thing. That's an excellent point. Of course, there's a number of factors involved in any crash and in any economic boom, right? But let's look at all the numbers first and see if you can see a trend. If you just looked at the 1925 to 1931 numbers, you might say, hey, well, you know what? Maybe something else caused the Great Depression.
Sure. Carry on.
But that's partly because the rich have all the money and they use it to speculate, which doesn't help the economy. So when you go to the 2000s, George Bush has the giant tax cuts. In fact, they're record-breaking, historic tax cuts. And what happens? In 2008, a terrible crash and a recession, what's now being called a Great Recession. Let me give you a little bit more perspective on this. The two times that the richest 1% in the country had the highest percentage of our nation's income were in 1928 when they had 23.9% of the nation's income, and in 2007 when they had 23.5% of the nation's income. So they have a giant percentage of the nation's income. What happens the very next year? 1929, crash, depression. 2008, crash, recession. So now we see what happens when the rich don't pay very much taxes. But you might be wondering, hey, what happens if they pay too much taxes? That's got to hurt the economy, right? So let's go to the golden years of America, 1945 to 1970. This is the years that the conservatives love, and they talk about, oh, my God, the golden years of the 50s and 60s. If we could just go back to that. Well, it turns out you go back to a tax rate between 71% and 94%. Consistently at 91% for the highest marginal bracket. So what happened when we had incredibly high taxes on the wealthy? We had an enormous economic boom, a legendary, historic economic boom, and created the legendary American middle class. So those are the facts, and as Ronald Reagan once said, facts are stubborn things.
So let us take your theory and apply it to the current tax code, which is obviously highly corrupt. We live in one of the most corrupt countries in the world because of our tax code. How would you even begin the process of applying what you are asserting to tax reform?
First of all, right now, some of your gains in the stock market are taxed at 15%. That is comical. That is absurd. It encourages speculation. It encourages you to take your money out and try riskier bets, which leads to bubbles, which leads to crashes. So would I raise that 15%? Hell yes, I would raise that 15%. All of us, all the people watching don't pay anywhere near 15%. We pay much higher. So why are the richest people in the country paying the lowest rate? That doesn't make any sense, let alone the income tax for the highest brackets. Would I increase that? When Clinton increased it, another economic boom. When are we going to learn from history?
How do you, what connection, walk me through, because I'm a little confused how raising taxes in your context ties to an economic boom, other than the fact that it may have happened at the same, there may have been the same period of time, but how do you connect the dots?
All right, now, there's good theories on that. First of all, I know for America it seems like, no, cutting taxes is always the right answer. It's such ingrained conventional wisdom that we're blind to the facts. So facts matter, numbers matter, it happened. Now, as to why it might have happened, look, one of the theories that economists have is that people, if they are taxed at a high percentage, have an incentive to keep their money in their businesses instead of taking it out for personal consumption or taking it out for speculative trading. Say they pour it back into their business, hire more people, grow their businesses, and that's part of the reason we have the economic boom.
If you were to look at those who argue that a lower tax rate for capital gain, you referenced the 15%, is imperative to get money into our economy to invest in the starting of new businesses, and that you want to incentivize rich people who have money to invest in the starting of new businesses, how do you respond to that? Quickly.
They're just not, first of all, they're just not borne out by the numbers. And second of all, we tried it that way. We lowered the rates, we lowered the rates, we lowered it, and what happened? Crash, crash, crash. So can we try something that actually worked? And there's always this theory of, oh my God, they're going to go to another country. Really? Where are they going to go? They're going to go to Botswana? Have at it, Hoss. They're going to go to Somalia? Have at it. No, they're going to come to the United States because we have a stable, booming economy.
I got it. The Young Turk, thank you so much.
Okay, here we are again. I hope you looked at the entire clip. And Mr. Cenk of the Young Turks was making his point about why lowering taxes on the rich does not work. And he gave some statistics talking about the years of the Great Depression and the tax rates back then, how the rich were paying the lowest amount of tax rates in the country back then, and as a result of that, it led to a depression. Then he jumps up to Bush in 2008, lowering taxes on the rich, and then once again we go into a recession, going into a depression. So those are two instances that he uses showing that when you lower taxes on the rich, that what conservatives say is the fact that if you do that, you create jobs. He says the record does not bear that out. Then he goes and says, well, let's look at the example of when what happens when you raise taxes on the rich. And he goes back to the 40s or 50s. I don't remember what years it was, but his argument then is when the tax rates were high, that we had more jobs and so forth, and his explanation was quite impressive. But what I'm here to show you is that the man, despite of what he's saying, is missing one key point, which basically rebuffs everything that he just said. I noticed in the years that he mentioned, the one area he skipped over is the 1 year or the one time span that liberals all over this nation do not want people to know about. They don't want them to know about the statistics or anything else, because it shows up the argument that they have as being nothing more than a pack of lies. And that year, I mean, that time span happened to be during the 80s. That was a nightmare scenario for the liberals under Ronald Reagan and the first George Bush, because everything that this man just said would happen when you lower taxes on the rich. He said the economy would tank. Well, in the 80s, when Ronald Reagan was in office and he instituted these massive tax cuts to the rich as well as everybody else, the economy boomed so much it set all types of records that still stand today. But the liberals don't want you to know that, and I'm going to give you some numbers so that you can understand what liberals actually try to do. Anything that makes them look like they don't know what they're talking about and shows them up for what they are, they try to ignore it, they skip over it, and they try to do what you call rewrite history. They hate Ronald Reagan, but yet and still it was Ronald Reagan that basically was responsible for the middle class being in the position that it is in, or was in, back in the 80s and 90s, until the Democrats start destroying it again. So I'm going to give you some numbers in a minute.